Where do our deepest ideas about political power, law, and societal order truly come from?
That's a huge question, isn't it?
It really is. Are they purely human inventions? Or do they echo something far older, maybe even theological, something woven into how we even think about authority and community?
Right. Those foundational assumptions.
Exactly. Well, today you're joining us for an extraordinary deep dive.
We're really digging in.
We are. We're taking a truly foundational text excerpts from the Douay-Rheims Holy Bible and applying two of the most, well, incisive and sometimes, frankly, unsettling political thinkers of the 20th century, Eric Voegelin and Carl Schmitt.
A powerful combination.
Yeah.
Challenging, definitely.
Absolutely. Our mission really is to excavate the surprising nuggets of insight that connect these ancient narratives to profound political philosophy and political theology, revealing not just history, but maybe the very DNA of political thought itself.
Indeed. And it's a fascinating lens through which to view these texts. You have Voegelin with his monumental Order in History.
Which is just massive.
Oh, absolutely. He sought to understand how different societies symbolize and, grapple with the concept of order, often tracing it back to divine revelation.
Okay.
He argued that genuine societal order and human flourishing, too, are deeply rooted in a transcendental divine reality.
Something beyond the merely human.
Precisely. And when societies deviate from that, well, that's when you see chaos, what he calls deformation.
Deformation, okay. And Schmitt, he comes at it differently.
Very differently. Though there are points of contact. Schmitt, the formidable theorist of sovereignty and the famous friend-enemy distinction.
Which is still intensely debated.
And likely always will be.
Yeah.
He provocatively argued that all significant concepts of modern state theory, everything from political parties to constitutional law, you name it, are, at their core, secularized theological concepts.
So political ideas are just religious ideas in disguise, essentially.
That's the provocative claim, yes, that the structure of the thinking remains even if the explicit theological content is gone. So, by bringing their frameworks together, we can unearth these underlying questions of divine authority, human rebellion, and, crucially, existential conflict woven throughout the biblical text.
And see why these stories still resonate.
Exactly. Why they continue to resonate with such potent political meaning, shaping our understanding of power and collective identity even today, often unconsciously.
Okay, let's dive in then, starting right at the absolute beginning, with what Voegelin would call the divine ground of order.
The foundation.
Yes, Genesis chapters 1 and 2. They lay out this initial kind of perfect blueprint, don't they?
They really do. You see God presented as the ultimate author and sovereign.
Undeniably.
He's the creator and ruler of all things, meticulously separating light from darkness, forming the earth, its creatures.
The whole cosmic setup.
Precisely. And then, most crucially, creating humanity to our image and likeness.
That phrase is so loaded.
It is. And the point here, especially for Voegelin, is that this isn't just a quaint origin story. It's a powerful foundational declaration of who defines reality.
Who's in charge?
Exactly. Who sets the terms of existence and, by extension, what constitutes true order. It's an assertion of absolute, unchallengeable authority right there in the first verses.
So it establishes the baseline, the ideal.
Precisely. From a Voegelinian perspective, this cosmological order isn't merely a physical arrangement of the universe. It provides the initial, unblemished, existential truth for humanity.
Existential truth. What does that mean practically?
It means the fundamental understanding of being, of purpose, of reality itself. Here, it describes a natural and spiritual harmony established by God, a given perfect order.
Right.
And humanity thrives simply by participating in the divine will within that order.
So no politics yet.
Well, what's crucial here is that at this primordial stage, there's no inherent political conflict, because there's no deviation from that divine will, no assertion of a competing human will.
Everyone's on the same page, so to speak.
Exactly. Humanity's very being and purpose are defined entirely within this unblemished divine order. It sets the ideal stage.
The standard.
The standard, yes, against which all subsequent deviations and the profound political consequences that inevitably follow will be measured. It's the blueprint before any human interference.
And, well, that interference doesn't take long to show up, does it?
Not at all. We move very quickly from this perfect given order to its first deformations, human disobedience.
Genesis chapter 3, the fall.
The fall. And for Voegelin, this is just a classic example of what he would identify as a Gnostic temptation.
Gnostic temptation. Okay, unpack that a bit. It sounds academic.
It does, but the idea is actually quite primal. It's the quest to be as gods. The serpent's temptation is explicit. Your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil.
Sounds like a good deal, doesn't it? Knowledge is power.
It sounds like enlightenment, exactly. But what's the insidious political danger lurking beneath that promise?
Okay.
That's the crucial distinction Voegelin makes. He sees this as a primal, archetypal act of Gnostic rebellion.
Rebellion, not just a mistake.
No, a rebellion. It's the human desire to usurp divine knowledge and authority, to become autonomous sources of truth and order ourselves,
Instead of receiving it.
instead of humbly recognizing and participating in the given divine order. It's the ultimate act of, well, intellectual and spiritual pride.
We know better.
Essentially, yes. We don't need God to tell us what's good or evil. We'll decide for ourselves. It's a fundamental turning away from transcendental truth, that truth given by God, towards an immanent, self-willed ordering principle.
Immanent meaning within the world. Human-centered.
Within the world, human-centered, yes.
Yeah.
And the immediate consequence isn't enlightenment. It's a profound deformation of experience.
Nakedness, shame, hiding from God.
Right. And this isn't just an individual moral failing like stealing a cookie. It's the very origin of internal and relational chaos.
How so?
Because when you reject the proper ground of being, your entire experience of reality becomes distorted. And that distortion has massive societal implications down the line. It's the crack in the foundation.
Okay. So from that internal spiritual rebellion, the chaos spreads outwards.
Immediately. We see the birth of overt internal conflict within humanity itself. Genesis chapter 4.
Cain and Abel. A deeply unsettling story.
It really is. Cain rises up against his brother Abel and slays him. Then, when God asks him, "Where is thy brother Abel?"
That chilling reply, "I know not. Am I my brother's keeper?" Defiance.
Utter defiance. And what's truly chilling about Cain and Abel, and where Schmitt's lens offers such a stark insight,
Okay, bring Schmitt in here.
is that this isn't just a family tragedy. It's the primordial template for all political conflict.
The template.
While it's not political in the sense of states clashing, this is the very first profound internal split within humanity. It's the emergence of the other Abel as a deadly rival in Cain's eyes.
Fueled by envy, wasn't it? And rejection.
Envy, yes, and a profound rejection of divine favor. This primordial act of fratricide foreshadows the potential for existential conflict within any community when divine order is rejected.
An individual will takes over.
Exactly. When individual will here, unchecked violence and ego takes precedence over communal harmony or over God's judgment. It's a profound, almost uncomfortable reminder that the friend-enemy distinction,
Schmitt's core concept.
as core concept, isn't some abstract theory of statecraft invented centuries later. It's etched into our earliest stories of human interaction. It marks the raw, unadulterated birth of division when that original given order begins to fray.
Wow. Okay. So the seeds of political conflict are sown right there at the beginning of human society.
So that's the argument, yes. The potential is there from the moment of rebellion.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think, because these individual deformations, this turning away, they quickly scale up.
They do.
We see human attempts at immanentizing order on a societal level, trying to build order from the ground up without God, and then the divine judgments that follow.
The pattern repeats.
It does. Before the flood, Genesis chapter 6 describes a widespread corruption that is truly alarming. It's not just one bad apple like Cain anymore.
No, it's systemic.
The text says, "The sons of God, seeing the daughters of men, that they were fair, took themselves wives of all which they chose. And then the earth became corrupted before God and was filled with iniquity." This sounds like a complete societal breakdown.
It is, and Voegelin would analyze this as a pervasive societal deformation, a complete immersion in imminent desires and self-gratification.
Just doing whatever feels good, basically.
Pretty much. A society losing all connection to anything transcendent, losing its soul, its moral compass.
And that has consequences.
Profound consequences. This moral collapse isn't just offensive to God in some abstract way. It creates an unsustainable, chaotic existence,
Yeah.
which, for Voegelin, justifies God's subsequent state of exception.
The flood.
The flood. The text makes it strikingly clear. "My spirit shall not remain in man forever, for it repenteth me that I have made them." This sets the stage for the most dramatic divine intervention, a complete reset.
Because the foundation itself is rotten.
Exactly. The foundational order has been so thoroughly corrupted it needs to be wiped clean.
Which, of course, is the flood narrative. God brings forth this cataclysm to destroy all flesh, saving only Noah, who found grace before the Lord.
A remnant.
A remnant. But this isn't just an act of divine punishment, is it? Seen through these political, theological lenses.
It's much more. From Schmitt's perspective, the flood is the quintessential example of a divine state of exception.
Okay, remind us what state of exception means for Schmitt.
It's when the normal legal order, the regular rules, are suspended to deal with a severe existential threat to the political community, or in this case, to existence itself.
Right, the sovereign decides when the rules don't apply.
Precisely. And here, God, as the ultimate sovereign, directly intervenes to suspend the normal course of life. He completely resets the conditions for order.
By wiping the slate clean.
Exactly. This radical act demonstrates that true sovereignty isn't merely revealed in making decisions within an established system.
Like passing laws or judging cases.
Right. True sovereignty is revealed in the power to decide over the exceptional case, to suspend all established norms and laws when the very existence of order is threatened by its own corruption.
So the flood is God acting as the ultimate sovereign, preserving order by, paradoxically, destroying the current state of things.
Yes. It's a complete nullification of existing norms to create a new beginning. It highlights that the sovereign's power is absolute and can transcend any established law for the sake of preserving, or in this case, recreating, order.
Okay. So humanity gets a fresh start after the flood. But the pattern seems to repeat itself pretty quickly, doesn't it?
Depressingly quickly, yes. We see another attempt to immanentize order, a kind of collective hubris.
The Tower of Babel, Genesis chapter 11.
The Tower of Babel.
Sure.
Men gather, they're unified, speaking one language.
Which sounds like a good thing initially. Unity.
It sounds like it. But what's their goal? To build a city and a tower, the top whereof may reach to heaven. And let us make our name famous before we be scattered abroad into all lands.
Reaching heaven, making a name for themselves. Avoiding being scattered. That sounds like defiance again.
It's absolutely defiance.
Yeah.
For Voegelin, the Tower of Babel is a textbook example of immanentizing the eschaton.
Okay, that phrase again, explain it in this context.
Immanentizing the eschaton means trying to bring about the ultimate fulfillment, the perfect end state, traditionally conceived as something transcendent, like heaven or the end times within history, solely through human effort.
Building heaven on earth by ourselves.
Exactly. It's the ultimate hubris. Building a physical bridge to the divine, not out of reverence or participation in God's order, but out of a desire for human glory, control, and self-sufficiency.
Let us make our name famous.
Precisely. It's also what Voegelin calls a political religion.
How so?
Because the state, or this human collective, becomes the ultimate source of meaning and salvation, effectively supplanting the transcendent God. They are explicitly rejecting divine limits and attempting to assert their own collective will as the ultimate source of truth and order.
It's a direct rebellion against God's intended design, which included scattering.
Yes, a rebellion against the divine dispersion and differentiation of mankind, which Voegelin sees as natural and actually necessary for healthy societies. They want a unified, self-made world order.
And God's response is to confound their tongue and scatter them.
He intervenes directly.
Now, Schmitt's analysis adds another fascinating layer here to God's intervention, doesn't it? How does the scattering connect to his ideas about the political?
It's crucial for Schmitt. He argues that the political, fundamentally, requires the possibility of distinguishing between friend and enemy.
You need an us and a them for politics to exist.
In Schmitt's view, yes, a universal, homogeneous human empire where all people are the same and united under one banner.
Well, that would effectively end the political.
Because there'd be no potential enemy.
Exactly. So by scattering humanity and creating distinct languages and groups, God ensures the existence of multiple differentiated communities.
He preserves the conditions for politics. This act, therefore, preserves the possibility of political distinctions, the foundational friend-enemy relationship. It prevents a single, potentially tyrannical human sovereign order built solely on self-will and the suppression of all difference.
So, paradoxically, dividing humanity prevents a worse kind of unity, a tyrannical one.
That's the implication in Schmitt's reading. Without this scattering, the very notion of distinct political communities and identities, and thus the political itself, would become impossible. It's a divine act to maintain political plurality and prevent a singular, oppressive human sovereignty based on human pride.
Okay, moving into part 2 then. We shift from these foundational, almost cosmic struggles, creation, fall, flood, Babel, to something more focused.
Yes, the establishment of a specific polity, a theocratic one.
Right. And it begins with the Abrahamic covenant, Genesis chapters 12 and 17. God calls Abram.
Out of the scattered nations.
Exactly. Promises to make him a great nation, and crucially, through him, all the kindreds of the earth be blessed. Then this covenant is sealed with circumcision, described as a perpetual covenant. This feels like a completely new chapter.
It absolutely is, a major shift. And what's fascinating here from Voegelin's viewpoint is that this marks a profound differentiation of consciousness.
Differentiation of consciousness, meaning
a new level of understanding, a breakthrough of divine truth into history. It moves from a general, universal understanding of humanity's relationship with God, like in creation or the flood narrative, to the specific choosing of a particular people.
Abraham's descendants.
Yes, chosen to bear a unique covenantal relationship with the transcendent God. This is the very foundation of a specific covenantal order, an existential truth given to a particular group.
So it shapes their whole identity, their destiny.
Absolutely. Their very understanding of reality, in a way distinctly different from all other nations. It's not a universal revelation like creation, it's a particular one, setting a people apart for a specific divine purpose.
Setting them apart. That sounds like it resonates with Schmitt, too.
Oh, definitely. From Schmitt's perspective, this covenant is a clear constituent act.
Constituent act, like founding a state.
In essence, yes. It explicitly defines the us, the descendants of Abraham, distinct from all other nations.
And circumcision plays a key role here.
A crucial role. Circumcision, as a permanent physical and ritual mark, establishes the fundamental homogeneity of this nascent people and their separation from the other.
What does homogeneity mean for Schmitt here? It's not just about everyone being identical, is it?
No, that's an excellent point. For Schmitt, homogeneity is far more than just sharing common traits. It means sharing those fundamental characteristics, be they religious, ethnic, cultural, cummings, that are necessary for a people to exist as a unified political unit.
The glue that holds them together.
Exactly. And circumcision, in this context, isn't just a ritual. It's a visible, permanent sign that binds them together and clearly distinguishes them from all outsiders, solidifying their collective identity.
It physically marks the boundary.
It physically manifests the internal unity and the external differentiation. It creates a people who belong together and who are, by divine decree, separate from the other nations around them.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of a truly political identity, divinely sanctioned and ritually enforced.
Okay, so a people set apart. The next pivotal stage is getting them out of Egypt, right?
Yeah.
The sovereign act of liberation.
The Exodus.
Yeah.
Foundational.
When God reveals himself to Moses in Exodus chapter 3, the burning bush, as I am, Whoam.
That incredible name.
Incredible. The ultimate self-existent being. He states he has seen the affliction of my people and will deliver them. Voegelin would surely highlight this as a pivotal theophany, wouldn't he? A direct, powerful revelation of God's nature and his active intervention in history.
Without a doubt. This provides the ultimate existential truth for Israel's liberation, grounding their freedom and future order directly in divine action. It's God acting decisively in history.
It's truly foundational, but then here's where Schmitt's insights become particularly sharp, maybe even uncomfortable.
Yes, the hardening of Pharaoh's heart.
Exactly. In Exodus chapter 4, God declares, "But I will harden his heart and he will not let the people go." And later the text just states, "The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt."
It's stated quite baldly.
It is. This isn't just a description of Pharaoh being stubborn. It's an assertion of divine power directly manipulating a political situation. What does this demonstrate for Schmitt? It feels like absolute sovereign power, maybe even beyond our ideas of justice.
It is precisely that. This is a crucial theological underpinning for Schmitt's concept of sovereignty. Remember, the true sovereign is he who decides on the exception.
Right.
God's decision to harden Pharaoh's heart demonstrates an absolute sovereign power that transcends Pharaoh's human will and, yes, perhaps even our conventional human understanding of justice.
God makes Pharaoh resist.
By this act, God himself creates the very conditions for this state of exception, the devastating plagues that will ultimately break down the existing political order in Egypt.
So Pharaoh becomes the enemy because God makes him resist.
In this reading, yes. Pharaoh, through his divinely manipulated resistance, becomes the ultimate enemy, defined by his opposition to God's sovereign command. This reveals that true sovereignty isn't just about making decisions within a system,
But about creating and suspending the system itself, pushing a situation to its breaking point to achieve a higher divine purpose. Wow.
That's a stark view of divine power, certainly.
The plagues, then, become a sequence of these divine states of exception.
Exactly. They escalate dramatically. Water to blood, frogs, lice, flies, each one a suspension of natural law.
Culminating in the death of the firstborn.
The final devastating blow. And the Passover ritual marks the chosen people, sparing them while judgment falls on Egypt.
So the plagues aren't just miracles or random punishment.
Not for Schmitt. They are explicit manifestations of divine warfare. They illustrate God's absolute power to suspend natural laws and destroy the designated enemy.
Yeah, and the Passover.
The Passover, in particular, is a foundational political theological act. It explicitly defines and sanctifies the friend Israel through salvation.
Marked by the blood on the doorposts.
Yes. And it clearly condemns the enemy, the Egyptians, through a precise act of divine judgment. It's a literal, indelible line in the sand, drawn by God himself, determining who lives and who dies.
Who belongs to his people and who is outside his protection.
Precisely. A definitive political theological boundary.
And that boundary becomes, well, utterly uncrossable at the Red Sea crossing in Exodus 14.
The climax of the liberation.
God opens the sea for Israel, they pass through, and then he closes it upon the pursuing Egyptians. The text explicitly says, "The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he pursued the children of Israel."
Repeating the theme.
And Israel is told, "In thy mercy thou hast been a leader to the people which thou hast redeemed." This is the ultimate physical separation.
This is the most dramatic friend-enemy distinction in action. You have God himself explicitly fighting for Israel.
No ambiguity there.
None. This miraculous intervention is an act of ultimate divine sovereignty, creating a clear, unbridgeable chasm between the two peoples. It ensures Israel's survival as a distinct entity.
So for Schmitt, this isn't just history. It's
an act of ultimate constituent power. God literally creates a people by defining and annihilating their foe. He establishes their existence through a definitive separation from their enemy. It's a physical manifestation of God's absolute power to secure the political existence of his chosen people.
Okay. So a people liberated, separated, defined against an enemy. The next crucial step is establishing their own order, right? Through law.
Yes, the Sinai Covenant. Exodus chapters 19 to 24.
God descends in a darkness of a cloud. The people are sanctified. He gives the 10 Commandments and other judgments, the mishpatim.
The core of the law.
And the people respond collectively, "All that the Lord has spoken, we will do." It's an oath.
A covenant oath.
Then Moses writes all the words of the Lord and sprinkles the blood of the testament upon the people. This feels incredibly significant, like a constitutional convention, but divine.
From Voegelin's perspective, this is precisely the formal establishment of Israel's covenantal order. It's a direct, public revelation of the divine nomos.
Nomos, the law.
The law, yes. But more than just rules, the fundamental organizing principle of their community. This isn't just a legal code they came up with.
No, it's given from the mountain.
Exactly. It's the existential truth that informs their political religion, profoundly differentiating them from other nations whose laws were based on human custom, tradition, or myth.
So the source matters immensely.
Critically, the Sinai Covenant doesn't emerge from the people. It is given to them by the transcendent. God is the ultimate legislator, the source of all legitimate authority. This divinely given law becomes the framework for their well-ordered soul as a collective.
And for Schmitt, how does he see Sinai?
For Schmitt, this is the supreme constituent act, directly from the divine sovereign.
Constituent act again, it makes them who they are.
Yes. The law is not a product of human deliberation or a social contract. It's a divine command, establishing the normative framework. Obedience to this law becomes the absolute basis for the homogeneity.
That internal unity again.
And the very existence of the people. It defines who they are by what they must do.
So any deviation isn't just sin, it's a threat to their existence.
Exactly. Any deviation from this divinely mandated law then becomes not just a moral transgression, but a direct threat to the very political existence of the people. It's the constitution of their existence, granted directly by the ultimate sovereign.
This divine ordering even extends to physical space and ritual, doesn't it? The detailed instructions for the tabernacle.
Exodus 25 onwards, immense detail.
For the tabernacle of the testimony and the priestly garments. And the craftsmen, Bezalel and Eliab, are explicitly filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom and understanding and knowledge in all manner of work to build it.
The divine inspiration is key there.
So it's not just a tent, it's sacred architecture divinely ordained.
Voegelin would view the tabernacle precisely like that, as the tangible, symbolic center of this divinely revealed order.
God dwelling among them.
Designed to make God's presence imminent among his people, yes. But crucially, within a transcendent framework. It's not that God is contained there, but his presence is focused there.
Yeah.
And the divine inspiration for its construction emphasizes its sacred, non-human origin. It's not a human invention, but a manifestation of divine will.
A focal point for the community.
Exactly. It provides a visible, communal focal point for their well-ordered soul, a place where the individual and collective spirit can align with the transcendent truth that defines their existence. It's the physical embodiment of their spiritual and political constitution.
Even with this direct divine presence, this brand new law, this sacred space, there's a powerful challenge almost immediately.
The golden calf. Exodus 32. A shocking moment.
While Moses is still on the mountain receiving the law, the people get restless. They demand of Aaron, "Make us gods that may go before us."
Impatience and fear are taking over.
Aaron makes a golden calf. God threatens to destroy them. Moses intercedes, but then Moses himself takes drastic action.
He does. Crushes the calf, burns it, grinds it to powder, makes the people drink it. And the text says, "The Lord therefore struck the people for the guilt." This isn't just a small lapse in faith.
No, it's a profound political theological crisis. How would Voegelin read this?
From a Vogelinian perspective, this is a profound act of apostasy, a relapse into archaic, imminent idolatry.
Going back to something tangible, something they can control.
Exactly. It's a spontaneous attempt by the people to create a human controllable, visible God, something they can see, touch, and manipulate, which is a severe deformation of the true transcendent divine order.
Instead of trusting the unseen God and his mediator.
Right. Instead of patiently awaiting Moses' return with the transcendent law, they seek an immediate, tangible source of order that is of their own making. This is humanity once again trying to define truth and order on its own terms.
Which leads to chaos and judgment.
Immediate spiritual and physical corruption. A collective spiritual illness that threatens the very core of their covenant.
And for Schmitt, this isn't just an internal religious problem, is it?
No, for Schmitt, this is a direct existential challenge to the absolute authority of the divine sovereign, first and foremost, and critically, to the homogeneity of the covenanted people. It introduces a fundamental division right at the heart of the community.
So Moses' response, breaking the tablets, destroying the idol, the executions, how does that fit Schmitt's ideas?
This is a classic example of a sovereign decision in a state of exception. Moses' actions are decisive, ruthless, and taken outside the normal legal process that hasn't even been fully established yet.
He's not holding a trial.
No, these are not judicial decisions. They are sovereign acts. He has to purify the community. He has to restore the foundational order, which has been fundamentally threatened by this internal rebellion against the true sovereign.
So the sovereign must act decisively, even violently.
For Schmitt, this underscores that the sovereign must be willing to act decisively, even violently, beyond established norms, to preserve the very existence and identity of the political unit when it faces an existential threat from within. The survival of the community depends on it.
Okay. Maintaining this hard-won order in the wilderness continued to be a struggle, didn't it?
A constant struggle. We see recurring murmuring. Numbers chapters 11 and 21.
The people repine at their fatigue. They complain about the manna, the light food, the lack of water. Basically, constant dissatisfaction.
And God responds harshly, with fire, with fiery serpents.
How does Voegelin understand this recurring pattern?
He'd interpret this as a recurring existential dissatisfaction, a profound failure to maintain faith in God's provision, despite his continuous care, his miracles.
A failure of memory, almost.
And trust. It signals a weakening of the internal order of the soul within the community, a constant tendency for human consciousness to revert to imminent desires. We want meat, we want water now, and immediate gratification, rather than sustain trust in the transcendent source of their sustenance and order.
So the murmurings are symptoms.
Symptoms of a societal soul that is still not fully aligned with its divine truth, always wanting to create its own reality, its own comfort, rather than accept the one given, even if it involves hardship.
And this internal dissatisfaction sometimes boils over into outright rebellion.
Yes, Korah's rebellion, number 16, a direct challenge to leadership.
Korah and his company challenge Moses and Aaron, saying, "You take too much upon you, ye sons of Levi. essentially accusing them of grabbing power.
A political challenge, framed theologically.
And God's response is incredibly dramatic. The earth swallows Korah and his followers. Fire consumes 250 others, offering incense.
A swift and terrifying judgment.
How does Schmitt analyze this? It seems like an internal purge.
It is, for Schmitt, an explicit internal friend-enemy distinction playing out within the leadership structure itself, and it has immediate, deadly consequences.
Korah is the internal enemy here.
Yes. His challenge is an attempt to usurp sovereign authority and redefine the political religious order from within, challenging the divinely appointed hierarchy.
And God's intervention.
God's direct supernatural intervention is the ultimate decision on the exception. It unequivocally confirms the divinely appointed hierarchy, Moses and Aaron, and eliminates the internal enemy.
A clear message.
A swift, absolute reassertion of sovereignty. It reminds everyone who holds ultimate authority, and what happens when that authority is directly challenged by internal dissent that threatens the very cohesion of the people. It's a divine purge to restore homogeneity and reinforce the established order.
Beyond these dramatic confrontations, the very identity of the people was reinforced through daily practices too, wasn't it? Almost like a constant low-level political theological act.
Absolutely. The laws of cleanliness in Leviticus, for example, chapter 11.
Detailed rules about clean and unclean animals, what you can eat, what you can touch, stating, "Defile not your souls, nor touch aught thereof, lest you be unclean."
Seems purely ritual or hygienic to, perhaps.
Right. But for Schmitt,
Schmitt would see these ritual laws as not merely moral or hygienic, but profoundly political theological.
how so?
They contribute directly to the homogeneity of the Israelite people. They ritually separate them and reinforce their collective identity through shared practices and taboos that clearly distinguish them from surrounding nations.
The food laws, for example, would make it hard to just blend in.
Exactly. These aren't arbitrary rules. They are the daily practices that embody and enforce the friend-enemy distinction at a cultural, everyday level. They define who belongs to the covenantal community and who remains an outsider. They're constant, subtle acts of self-constitution, reinforcing their separateness.
Okay. And as the Israelites finally prepare to enter the Promised Land, this friend-enemy distinction takes on a new, much more brutal dimension.
The conquest of Canaan, Joshua chapters 1 to 12.
God promises, "None shall stand against you. The Lord your God shall lay the dread and fear of you upon all the land that you shall tread upon." That sounds like psychological warfare almost.
It functions that way, certainly.
And the conquest itself involves the total destruction of cities and inhabitants. The text is explicit. Joshua slew all that breathed, as the Lord, the God of Israel, had commanded him.
This is difficult material, obviously.
Extremely. How do our thinkers process this? Schmitt first.
For Schmitt, this is existential friend-enemy warfare on a grand scale.
Yeah.
Explicitly commanded and justified by God. The total destruction of the existing inhabitants isn't just a military strategy.
It's more fundamental.
It's a constituent act of the Israelite state. Clear the land for their homogeneous settlement and their divinely ordered life. It establishes their political space through the elimination of the other.
And the dread and fear.
That's a psychological weapon wielded by the sovereign, demonstrating absolute power to enforce its will and demoralize resistance. It's part of establishing dominance.
And Voegelin, how does he approach the conquest?
From Voegelin's perspective, this signifies the eradication of older, corrupt cosmological orders, what the text refers to as the laws of the nations, which I will cast out before you.
So it's clearing out deformed ways of life, false gods, corrupt practices.
Yes, eradicating those spiritual and political deformations to make way for Israel's newly differentiated, divinely sanctioned order. It's a cleansing, a violent one, to establish a new, theoretically pure societal form, grounded in the recently revealed divine truth. It's the negative side of establishing the positive order.
All right, moving into part 3. We enter a period after the conquest, but before the monarchy, that seems marked by profound crisis.
The era of the judges, a turbulent time.
Characterized by political fragmentation, it really feels like a recurring state of exception, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The book of Judges describes these cycles. Israel falls into apostasy, they're oppressed by enemies, they cry out, God raises up a charismatic judge to deliver them.
And then the cycle repeats.
Over and over, and it culminates with that famous, ominous refrain repeated at the end. In those days, there was no king in Israel, but everyone did that which seemed right to himself.
That paints a picture of utter chaos. Anarchy, almost.
Well, from Schmitt's perspective, this period perfectly illustrates a society in a prolonged state of exception, precisely because of the absence of a clear, stable sovereign.
No central authority.
Right. The judges are temporary, charismatic figures. They emerge in times of acute crisis to make the necessary decisions against the external enemy.
Like Gideon or Samson or Deborah.
Exactly. They restore a fragile internal order, but they lack enduring institutional authority. There's no consistent decision-maker. The system relies on intermittent, exceptional leadership.
And the internal situation, the text gives some horrifying examples.
It does. The internal chaos. Think of Micah's personal idol and priest in Judges 17, or the horrific story of the Levite's concubine and the subsequent brutal civil war against the tribe of Benjamin in Judges 19 and 20.
A great wickedness, the text calls it.
Wow, indeed. It highlights the complete breakdown of central authority and the fragmentation of societal norms when no sovereign can ultimately decide or enforce the law. This is a society teetering on the brink, constantly needing exceptional short-term intervention because it lacks a stable political center.
And Voegelin's analysis here would focus on the internal state, wouldn't it? The spiritual condition.
Yes, his analysis is equally stark. For him, this is a clear demonstration of the deformation of order, when a society fails to maintain fidelity to that transcendental divine truth established at Sinai.
Everyone did that which seemed right to himself. That sounds like total subjectivity.
Exactly. That phrase isn't just about individual freedom. It points to a fragmented subjective morality replacing the objective transcendental divine law. Each person, each tribe, becomes their own source of truth.
Which leads
directly to profound social and political decay. It necessitates those repeated divine interventions, the judges, just to avert total collapse. It's a society struggling desperately to find its spiritual and political footing, because the connection to the true source of order has been severed or severely weakened.
This chaotic situation seems to lead directly to the next big shift, the demand for a king.
A pivotal moment, a turning point, 1 Samuel chapter 8.
The elders of Israel come to Samuel, the last judge, and they demand a king like all the nations.
They want to be normal, politically speaking.
Samuel is clearly displeased. He warns them what this will mean, the burdens of monarchy. Their sons taken for chariots and armies, their daughters for perfumers and cooks, their fields and servants taxed for royal use.
The cost of centralized power.
A heavy tax on their freedom. But God tells Samuel something striking. They have not rejected thee, but me, that I should not reign over them.
That's the heart of it, isn't it?
It really is. Now here's where it gets really interesting for Voegelin. How does he interpret this demand?
For Voegelin, this is a conscious rejection of direct divine rule, the theocracy, in favor of a human, immanent institution, a king they can see.
Right. It signifies a profound step towards what he calls immanentizing the eschaton again.
Yes, seeking salvation, order, and security from a visible human leader rather than directly from the transcendent God.
They're asking for a tangible human solution to the chaos of the judges, period.
Exactly. But what's the profound shift in how they understand their place in the world here? For Voegelin, it's a move away from that differentiated truth, away from God as the direct, unseen sovereign.
Towards a more normal but ultimately flawed human political arrangement.
Precisely. They are trading transcendent security, or at least the ideal of it, for imminent, visible control.
Is that necessarily bad? Maybe it's just pragmatic?
For Voegelin, it's dangerous because it risks substituting a human leader who will inevitably disappoint and potentially deform the spiritual order for the true, divine source of order. They want a king they can see, a king like the other nations.
Rather than remaining a peculiar people whose unique covenantal order is rooted in an invisible, transcendent God.
Exactly. It's a human attempt to solve a spiritual problem, or at least a problem rooted in spiritual failure, with a purely political solution. And for Voegelin, that's ultimately a deformation, a lowering of the sights.
Okay. But from Schmitt's perspective, isn't this demand understandable, even necessary?
Understandable, certainly. From Schmitt's perspective, the people's demand for a king reflects a fundamental human need for a concrete, visible sovereign figure.
Someone who can actually make decisions and enforce them.
Yes, someone who can make definitive decisions, particularly in the face of persistent external enemies, like the Philistines, who were a major threat at the time.
So it highlights a tension.
It highlights the inherent tension between a divinely imposed law, often mediated mysteriously, and the human desire for a sovereign who can act pragmatically, decisively, to ensure political existence.
The chaos of the judges' proof that wasn't working reliably.
It's exactly. The period of the Judges demonstrated that a charismatic, temporary leader popping up in a state of exception wasn't enough for long-term political stability.
They needed consistency.
They needed a consistent, decisive authority. So, for Schmitt, this demand highlights the inherent tension between a purely theological covenantal order and the raw, pragmatic necessities of political existence. They want a sovereign who can enforce homogeneity, define the enemy, and make decisions to protect the people's life.
It's a recognition of the political in a very human sense over the purely theological.
Yes, and a desire for a visible hand on the tiller, someone clearly in charge.
So they get their king, Saul, but he turns out to be, well, profoundly flawed, almost right from the start.
A tragic figure in many ways.
He's chosen partly for his impressive physical stature. From his shoulders and upward he appeared above all the people. Looks the part.
He does, but his rule is quickly marked by disobedience. Key moments.
He offers a sacrifice before Samuel arrives, usurping priestly functions. That seems like a big overstep.
A confusion of roles, yes.
And famously, he spares Agag, the Amalekite king, and the best of their flocks against God's explicit command to utterly destroy Amalek.
A direct act of disobedience and warfare.
And later, his desperation leads him to consult a witch at Endor, a complete violation of the law. This is a rapid descent for someone divinely chosen.
It is. And Voegelin would analyze Saul's failure as stemming fundamentally from his inability to submit to and maintain fidelity to the divine order that his kingship was supposed to serve.
He wasn't just a king like the nations. He was meant to be God's representative.
Exactly. His actions exemplify the deformation of the sacred. He attempts to blend human expediency.
Like waiting for Samuel was politically inconvenient, maybe. Sparing the spoils was economically attractive.
Plausibly. He tries to blend that human calculation with divine command in a way that fundamentally distorts the latter. He's trying to be a king like the nations in terms of exercising power, but without the underlying spiritual discipline required of Israel's unique covenantal order.
He forgets his primary allegiance.
Or fails to live up to it. His later psychological distress, his paranoia, his descent into consulting forbidden practices, these are clear signs, for Voegelin, of deep existential disorder stemming directly from his rebellion against the true source of order. He tries to operate by purely human rules when he's called to lead within a divine framework.
And for Schmitt, how does Saul's failure look through his lens, especially the failure with the Amalekites?
For Schmitt, Saul's crucial failures involve a lack of decisive sovereign action in a state of existential war. Remember, Amalek was designated as the enemy to be utterly destroyed.
A divine command for total war.
Yes, Saul's failure to execute God's absolute command against the Amalekites critically undermines his legitimacy as a divinely appointed sovereign.
Why is that failure so critical for Schmitt?
It tells us that for Schmitt, the sovereign's primary duty is to protect the political existence of the community, which often means defining and, crucially, eliminating the enemy when commanded or necessary.
So
he flinched. His failure to utterly destroy the Amalekites is a failure of sovereign will in a matter of life and death, a friend and enemy. It demonstrates that mere human selection, even with a divine anointing, is insufficient without absolute adherence to the foundation command, especially when it comes to the existential struggle against designated foes.
So a sovereign has to be willing to make those hard, ruthless choices.
A sovereign must be willing to make those hard, decisive choices, even if they seem morally ambiguous from a different perspective, for the sake of the political unit's survival and identity, as defined by the ultimate sovereign. Saul compromised where absolute decision was required, and that cost him his kingdom and his life.
The contrast with David, then, is really striking.
It is. David emerges as the divinely chosen sovereign, anointed by Samuel while Saul is still king, described famously as a man after God's own heart.
And God makes an unconditional covenant with David, promising him a faithful house and an enduring kingdom. This seems much more solid.
A different kind of foundation. And David brings the ark to Jerusalem, centralizing worship. He seems to embody a more successful model of divinely sanctioned leadership, at least initially.
How would Voegelin see David compared to Saul?
Voegelin would indeed see David as representing a much closer alignment with the transcendental divine order. His kingship is integrated into God's historical plan.
He understands his place better.
It seems so, and the covenant with him signifies a further differentiation of order, establishing a specific lineage through which God's rule will be mediated on earth. David, despite his later very serious flaws,
Which we'll get to.
generally strives to align his rule with God's will, especially early on. his joyful, uninhibited dance before the ark as it enters Jerusalem.
Which Michal, Saul's daughter, despised him for.
Yes, that dance symbolizes, for Voegelin, a vibrant, ordered soul participating in divine revelatory movements, a true embodiment of the covenantal leader whose personal order reflects and reinforces the societal order. He knows his place in the divine hierarchy and rejoices in it.
And for Schmitt, David the warrior king.
For Schmitt, David is the legitimate, divinely chosen sovereign whose numerous military victories against Goliath, the Philistines, the Amalekites he does deal with, decisively solidify the Israelite state.
These victories aren't just military successes.
They are proof of God's backing in defining and overcoming external enemies through existential struggle. David demonstrates the decisive leadership necessary for political existence, the leadership Saul lacked.
And bringing the ark to Jerusalem.
By bringing the ark to Jerusalem, he centralizes both religious and political authority. Reinforcing the homogeneity of the kingdom, he consolidates power, unites the people under a single sovereign, and decisively deals with threats, embodying the qualities of a strong, divinely sanctioned ruler who can maintain order and protect the political unit. He succeeds where Saul failed.
Yet, even with David, the divinely chosen king, the man after God's own heart, we see challenges to legitimate authority, often through internal friend-enemy conflicts. And it starts with David's own profound sin.
A turning point in his reign. To Samuel chapters 11 and 12.
David's adultery with Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite, one of his loyal soldiers, and then his orchestration of Uriah's murder to cover it up.
A shocking abuse of power.
And Nathan the prophet confronts him, boldly, announcing divine judgment, "The sword shall never depart from thy house," and public shame. This shows even the king isn't above the law, does it?
Absolutely. What's fascinating here is that even the divinely chosen king is bound by the transcendental moral order.
God's law still applies.
David's sins represent a profound existential deviation, a deformation of his own soul. And crucially, this personal deformation leads directly to the breakdown of order within his family and kingdom.
The consequences are political, not just personal.
Exactly. It illustrates that even legitimate human authority must be constantly realigned with transcendental morality. Otherwise, it loses its ground and invites chaos. The political order, however well established, cannot stand separate from the moral order of its people and its leaders.
So when the leader's soul is disordered,
It invariably leads to societal disorder, as we see vividly with the terrible consequences that follow. For David's household, Amnon, Tamar, Absalom, it's a chain reaction of violence and betrayal.
and the prophet Nathan, in this instance, how does he look through Schmidt's lens? He's speaking truth to power, directly challenging the sovereign.
Nathan embodies the ultimate political theology here. He reminds the human sovereign David of the absolute authority of the divine sovereign and the binding nature of his law, even for the king himself.
So Nathan represents a higher authority.
He does. This highlights that human rulers, though endowed with immense power, are still under a higher judgment. Their decisions are not absolutely autonomous. Nathan's confrontation is a stark reminder that even the king is not the ultimate sovereign.
There's a check on his power.
A crucial check. Political theology asserts a transcendent authority that can hold earthly rulers accountable. David is king, but God is King of Kings. And Nathan is his mouthpiece in this moment of crisis, defining the moral boundaries that even a divinely appointed leader cannot cross with impunity.
This internal disorder, stemming from David's sin, then culminates tragically in Absalom's rebellion. 2 Samuel 15 through 18.
The predicted sword in his house comes true.
Absalom, David's own son, conspires, steals the hearts of the people, proclaims himself king in Hebron,
A direct usurpation.
and then symbolically and politically disgraces his father by publicly taking David's concubines on the top of the house. A very visible claim to sovereignty, a challenge to the established order.
A calculated political act.
David is forced to flee Jerusalem weeping. His kingship is existentially threatened from within. Joab, David's general, ultimately kills Absalom in battle, despite David's specific orders to spare him. This feels like the ultimate internal friend-enemy conflict.
It is a textbook example of an internal friend-enemy conflict. A devastating civil war that poses an existential threat to David's legitimate, divinely sanctioned rule.
Absalom becomes the internal enemy.
Clearly, his actions are explicitly designed to shatter the loyalty and homogeneity of David's kingdom, to tear apart the very fabric of the political unit.
And Joab's decision to kill Absalom against David's command, how does Schmitt read that?
Joab's decision is a classic Schmittian sovereign act, even though Joab isn't the king. It's a pragmatic, ruthless decision made in a state of exception, the midst of civil war, to decisively end the internal enemy and restore the political order.
Even if it means disobeying the king's personal wish.
Yes, even if it means sacrificing the king's emotional command, his personal wishes for his son, for the sake of the state's survival. Joab understands, perhaps better than the grieving David at that moment, that the preservation of the political unit must, at times, override personal sentiment. He makes the hard political choice.
And Voegelin. He would presumably trace Absalom's rebellion back to David's sin.
Yes, Voegelin would see Absalom's rebellion as a direct manifestation of the disorder and corruption that stemmed from David's earlier sins with Bathsheba and Uriah. It demonstrates how personal moral failures deform the broader political and familial order.
Cause and effect.
It shows the devastating consequences of ambition. Absalom's ambition, when it's detached from divine sanction and fueled by resentment and opportunism. It's not just a political struggle, it's a symptom of the spiritual illness that infected the kingdom, stemming from a disregard for transcendental morality at the very top.
Okay, as we move into part 4, we witness the next stage, the decline and eventual division of the kingdom. Political theology seems to be truly in crisis now.
The seeds sown earlier start to bear bitter fruit.
It begins, ironically, with Solomon, David's son. His early reign, described in 1 Kings chapters 3 to 8, actually marks a high point, a pinnacle of established order.
It really does. God grants Solomon incredible wisdom.
The famous judgment with the 2 mothers and the baby.
Right. And he builds the magnificent temple in Jerusalem, which becomes the centralized place of worship, replacing the portable tabernacle. It institutionalizes the divine presence.
Solomon's prayer at the temple dedication acknowledges God as the true ruler, and the era is described initially with no adversary nor evil occurrence. It almost sounds like a restored Eden, doesn't it? A moment of perfect order.
Voegelin would absolutely agree that Solomon's early reign represents a high point in the differentiation of order. Divine wisdom directly informs governance.
Wisdom in action.
And the establishment of that permanent central dwelling for God's name in Jerusalem signifies a mature stage of the covenantal order. This institutionalization of divine presence means that the divine truth is, theoretically, well integrated into the political, social, and spiritual structure of the nation.
So for Voegelin, this period is an example of...
An example of a relatively well-ordered soul manifesting in a well-ordered society, with a clear understanding and, at least initially, adherence to transcendent truth. It's the ideal actualized briefly.
However, this pinnacle is short-lived. Tragically short-lived. 1 Kings chapter 11 details Solomon's decline.
His idolatry and divided heart.
He accumulates many foreign wives. Hundreds, the text says. Political alliances, perhaps?
Most likely. But the text explicitly states, his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. That comparison is damning.
And he doesn't just tolerate their religions, he actively participates. He builds temples for Astarth, Moloch, Chemosh, other gods right near Jerusalem.
The shocking betrayal of the covenant.
And God declares judgment. I will take away the kingdom out of his son's hand and will give thee 10 tribes for David my servant's sake. The division is foretold as a direct consequence. This is a monumental shift, a tragic downfall.
It is. And from a Vogelinian perspective, Solomon's foreign wives and the subsequent idolatry illustrate a catastrophic deformation of the covenantal order.
Deformation again. How specifically here?
This isn't just personal sin, though it is that too. It's the introduction of syncretism and polytheism right into the heart of the kingdom, which fundamentally erodes the existential truth of Israel's unique monotheistic faith.
He compromises the core identity.
Exactly. It's a prime example of a political religion allowing, even promoting, religious pluralism for perceived political expediency, like those marital alliances.
Which ultimately corrupts the true divine order of the soul and the state. He's substituting divine order for human political calculation.
Believing he can manage the spiritual life of the nation for worldly gain. And it leads to the unraveling of everything his father David and his own early wisdom had built. It's a fatal miscalculation.
And Schmitt's analysis. How does Solomon's embrace of foreign cults look through his lens? It seems to directly attack that idea of homogeneity.
It fundamentally undermines it. For Schmitt, the religious homogeneity of Israel, their shared allegiance to Yahweh alone, was crucial for their political existence and unity.
Solomon breaks that unity.
His embrace of foreign cults, brought in through marriage and actively supported by building temples, directly introduces heterogeneity into the very heart of the kingdom. These foreign elements, these other gods and their worshippers.
They become internal enemies.
From the perspective of the covenantal order, yes. They become internal enemies to that order. They create fissures, competing loyalties that will ultimately, inevitably, lead to political fragmentation and civil war.
So the political necessity of alliances tragically undercuts the theological foundation of the state.
Precisely. A fatal contradiction.
Which brings us directly to the divided kingdom. The split actually happens. A permanent state of crisis, competing political theologies, vividly described in 1 Kings chapter 12.
The prophecy is fulfilled.
Rehoboam, Solomon's son and heir, goes north to be acclaimed king. The northern tribes plead for lighter burdens than Solomon had imposed.
A reasonable request, perhaps.
But Rehoboam, rejecting the advice of older counselors and listening to his young friends, gives that incredibly arrogant and harsh reply. My little finger is thicker than the back of my father. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions.
Disastrous political judgment.
Utterly disastrous. This leads immediately to the revolt of the 10 northern tribes who followed Jeroboam, an official who had previously fled from Solomon. This is a dramatic political and theological schism.
It is. And Rehoboam's unwise, incredibly harsh decision creates that fundamental political split. For Schmitt, this establishes a permanent friend-enemy distinction within the formerly united Israelite nation.
Brother against brother, tribe against tribe.
Yes, a previously homogeneous political unit fractures into distinct, mutually opposed entities. Judah in the south, Israel in the north.
And Jeroboam, the new king of the north, immediately takes steps to consolidate his rule. Religious steps.
Crucially, yes. To secure his rule, he sets up golden calves in Bethel and Dan, at the southern and northern borders of his kingdom.
Golden calves again. Echoes of the wilderness.
Deliberate echoes, almost certainly. He does this specifically to prevent his people from going down to Jerusalem to worship at the temple, fearing they'd return their allegiance to Rehoboam.
So it's explicitly political.
Absolutely. He even calls the calf worship "make a feast to the Lord," trying to legitimize it, and appoints new priests from outside the Levitical line.
How does Schmitt view Jeroboam's actions?
As clear Shemitian attempts to create a new, separate political religion to consolidate his regime. This is a deliberate act to enforce homogeneity within his new northern kingdom.
By cutting ties with the old center.
Exactly. By severing religious and cultic ties to Judah and Jerusalem. It dramatically demonstrates how political necessity, the need to secure his rule and prevent internal dissent or reunification, directly drives theological innovation and schism. He creates a new political religious order specifically in opposition to the old one in Jerusalem.
And Voegelin. He must see this as a disaster.
An unmitigated disaster. Voegelin would point to Jeroboam's golden calves as a direct reversion to the deformation of the Exodus period, a deliberate act of immanentizing religious devotion for overtly political purposes.
Using religion as a tool of the state.
Precisely. This is a deeply problematic political religion. It replaces genuine worship of the transcendent God with state-sanctioned idolatry. This further corrupts Israel's true order, deepening the spiritual decay that began with Solomon and leading the northern kingdom down a path of increasing apostasy.
Because the political system itself is now actively propagating a false understanding of the divine.
Yes, the state becomes an engine of spiritual deformation.
In this context of decline, division, and state-sponsored apostasy, the prophets emerge as really crucial figures, don't they?
They become the primary voices, resisting deformation, calling for true order.
Like Elijah. His confrontation with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel in 1 Kings 18 is incredibly dramatic.
One of the most iconic scenes.
Elijah challenges 450 prophets of Baal, sponsored by King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. He forces a clear choice on the people. How long halts you between two sides? If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal, follow him.
No compromise possible.
God answers Elijah's prayer by fire, consuming the sacrifice, the altar, even the water in the trench, proving his sovereignty. And Elijah then orders the slaying of the prophets of Baal. This is a life-or-death moment, a cosmic showdown.
It is. And for Schmitt, this is a dramatic, existential, friend-enemy distinction being imposed by divine will through the prophet Elijah.
Elijah forces the decision.
He forces a fundamental decision between competing gods, or more precisely, between competing sovereigns. It's not just a religious debate. It's a political act of defining ultimate authority for Israel.
And God's intervention.
God's intervention, answering by fire, unequivocally identifies the true sovereign, Yahweh, and exposes Baal as the enemy, a false god whose worship is inimical to Israel's political and spiritual existence.
And the slaying of the prophets.
The slaying of the prophets of Baal is then a decisive sovereign act of purification, taken in a state of exception created by the divine intervention. It's done to restore homogeneity and true order within Israel. It's a moment where the divine sovereign asserts his absolute authority through his chosen representative, eliminating those who actively promote the worship of the enemy God and threaten the very soul of the nation.
And Voegelin, how does he see Elijah's role?
Voegelin would see Elijah as a powerful voice for differentiated truth, standing against pervasive societal and political deformation.
He represents the true path.
He calls for a radical return to the clear, unambiguous recognition of the one transcendent God as the ultimate source of order. He exposes the falseness of the syncretic political religion embraced by Ahab and Jezebel.
Oh, it's truly a battle for the soul of the nation.
Rooted in the soul of its people and embodied in the prophet versus the corrupted state. Elijah embodies the prophetic consciousness that holds fast to the differentiated truth amidst a society deeply deformed by this political religion, the state-sanctioned worship of Baal.
He's a critical counterforce.
Exactly, exposing the spiritual and political corruption of Ahab and Jezebel's syncretic rule. His challenge is a call for radical conversion, a return to the true existential truth that forms the basis of Israel's covenantal order. Without such prophetic voices, Voegelin would argue, the deformation could become total and irreversible.
Despite figures like Elijah, the overall trajectory, especially for the northern kingdom, seems downward. These cycles of apostasy and occasional reform eventually lead to judgment.
They do. And Judah, the southern kingdom, also has its deep crises.
Like Manasseh's reign in 2 Kings 21, the text portrays it as one of the lowest points. Utter wickedness.
Deepest deformation, perhaps. He rebuilds the high places his father Hezekiah had destroyed, sets up altars to Baal, worships all the host of heaven, astral cults.
Practices divination, human sacrifice even. The text says he provokes me by all the works of their hands, and God declares irreversible judgment. My indignation shall be kindled against this place. This isn't just a king's sin, it feels like a national catastrophe.
Voegelin would view Manasseh's reign precisely like that. The deepest plunge into spiritual and political deformation. It represents a widespread, state-sponsored embrace of various political religions, Canaanite cults, Mesopotamian astral worship, necromancy.
A complete rejection of the covenant.
A fundamental rejection of the unique truth of Israel's covenant. This leads to a profound corruption of the soul and the state, a complete spiritual disorientation. For Voegelin, this is a society utterly lost in its immanent desires and various attempts to create meaning from human-made rituals, completely disconnected from any transcendent mooring. It's a society that has entirely lost its way, justifying the severest divine judgment.
Then, after Manasseh, there's a brief, dramatic reversal, Josiah's reform, 2 Kings 22 and 23.
A glimmer of hope, a last chance almost.
The Book of the Law, likely Deuteronomy or a part of it, is miraculously found in the temple during repairs.
Lost for generations, perhaps.
Josiah hears it read, tears his garments in horror, inquires of the Lord through the prophetess Huldah, and then initiates a radical, sweeping purge of all idolatry. High places destroyed, foreign cults eradicated, priests of false gods executed, a complete reformation based on the rediscovered text.
It's an incredible moment.
How would Voegelin interpret this?
As a powerful, albeit ultimately temporary, return to the foundational divine truth and order revealed in the law. The discovery of the text itself is a rediscovery of existential truth for the nation, a moment of profound recognition of what they had lost.
And Josiah's actions.
His courageous and sweeping actions are a desperate attempt to restore the internal and external order of the kingdom, pulling it back from the brink of total deformation. It demonstrates that even in deep decline, the possibility of a return to truth remains. It's a reordering of the national soul through renewed adherence to divine law.
Then Schmitt. How does Josiah look through his lens? He seems like a very decisive sovereign here.
Absolutely. For Schmitt, Josiah acts as a decisive sovereign in a state of crisis. He implements a top-down purge to reestablish religious and political homogeneity based on the rediscovered divine law.
He's ruthless.
His actions are ruthless against those deemed enemies of the true covenantal order, the priests of Baal, the foreign cults. This highlights, for Schmitt, the necessity of strong, decisive leadership when a political unit faces deep ideological struggle and internal heterogeneity threatens its very existence.
The sovereign must purge the internal enemy.
The sovereign must be willing to make severe decisions, even against fellow citizens or established practices, to preserve the core identity and political existence of the community when that identity is fundamentally challenged. Josiah does exactly that.
But ultimately, tragically, Even Josiah's reforms couldn't avert the final judgment, at least for Judah.
No, the momentum of past sins, especially Manasseh's, was too great, according to the narrative.
The fall of Jerusalem and the exile, 2 Kings 24 and 25. Judah is conquered by Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. Its kings are taken captive, Jerusalem and the temple are burnt, the walls torn down, and the people led into exile.
The end of the kingdom.
The text states simply, God was angry against Jerusalem till he cast them out of their land. This is the ultimate collapse, isn't it? The end of the political experiment, for now.
It is. And Voegelin would unequivocally identify the exile as the ultimate tragic consequence of Israel's repeated deformations of the divine order.
The result of centuries of turning away.
Their persistent embrace of various political religions, their rejection of true transcendence. It signifies the catastrophic failure of their human-instituted political order, particularly the monarchy they demanded. It's a total collapse resulting from the internal loss of an ordered soul and the prolonged rejection of their covenantal truth. For Voegelin, the exile is the historical manifestation of a people suffering from deep spiritual disease, a society that has lost its authentic connection to the divine ground of order.
And finally, from Schmitt's perspective, the destruction and exile.
From Schmitt's perspective, the destruction of Jerusalem and the exile represent God's ultimate sovereign decision against his disobedient people.
God acting as sovereign one last time over the nation.
Yes. It's an act of divine judgment that utterly redefines their political existence. It dramatically demonstrates the absolute nature of his power when his foundational laws, the basis of their political identity, are persistently transgressed.
And the fact that Babylon is the instrument.
The external enemy, Babylon, becomes the instrument of divine will. This demonstrates for Schmitt the profound lesson that the ultimate sovereign can use any instrument, even an external enemy, to enforce his will and redefine the political existence of a people.
So external conflict can be divine judgment.
It can be a form of divine sovereign judgment. The destruction of Jerusalem is not merely a military defeat. It's a divine decision that ends one political form and forces the people into a new, undefined existence in exile. It's a stark reminder of who holds ultimate authority, and that transgressing foundational laws, moral, political, theological, carries existential consequences for the very survival of a people as a political entity.
Wow. What a journey through these texts.
It really is. And what we've seen today, I think, by looking at these biblical narratives through the lenses of Voegelin and Schmitt, is this profound and, let's be honest, often unsettling exploration.
Definitely unsettling at times.
An exploration of what it means to order a society, what it means to wield power, and how we define who we are, especially in the face of both internal and external challenges.
They're not just ancient stories collecting dust.
Not at all. They feel like blueprints almost
Right.
for understanding these recurring patterns of human political aspiration and, well, often failure, always pushing the boundaries of divine command and human will.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, that our discussions today about political order, national identity, sovereignty, they're often deeply rooted in theological assumptions.
Whether we acknowledge them or not.
Exactly. Whether acknowledged or not. The Bible, seen this way, isn't just a historical or religious text. It becomes a kind of foundational document for understanding this complex interplay of divine command, human will, human rebellion, and the very nature of political existence.
That constant tension between human attempts to create perfect order on our own terms.
And the transcendent truth, or the sovereign decision, that often exposes our limitations, sometimes brutally.
And you see both perspectives playing out. From the dangers Voegelin warned about immanentizing the eschaton, trying to create heaven on earth through purely human means, which invariably seems to lead to deformation.
Right.
To the stark reality, Schmitt articulated the friend-enemy distinction, the necessity of the sovereign decision, the power wielded in moments of state of exception. These ancient stories provide a truly timeless commentary on the human political condition.
The inescapable questions of authority, loyalty, identity, survival.
Exactly. They show us, I think, that the political realm is always, perhaps inescapably, entangled with questions of ultimate meaning and ultimate order, even when it tries very hard to pretend it isn't.
And that leaves us, maybe you listening, with a provocative thought to chew on. If the ultimate foundations of any society's political order are, by nature, theological, even if unacknowledged, even if secularized in our modern context.
If Schmitt is right about that secularization.
Right. Then when contemporary states face profound crises, when they declare emergencies or states of exception, what gods are truly being invoked in the decisions made, what ultimate values are being appealed to, and what kind of ultimate order are they genuinely trying to restore or perhaps create?
Whose sovereignty is really being asserted and on what grounds? Something to ponder, definitely.
Something to ponder long after our deep dive into these powerful, ancient, and still deeply relevant texts.